Hola, buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Ian Cook, and as you can probably hear, Spanish is not my native language. English is. I am someone who's fascinated by people, data, and business. I've spent my career working on the people side of business, looking at how do we use data? How does that help us understand what's going on with our workforce? How does that link up, most importantly, to some of the financial components? Um, Making that link between people, data, and the business. Spent many years working in that space, and today what I have to share with you is an emerging use of of technology, and interestingly how that relates to people. So we're calling it the age of people intelligence. As all of us have experienced, the pandemic, the events of the last 3 years have significantly impacted the ways in which people are thought of, people engage with business, and how technology supports that. Again, it's an area of expertise, area of fascination. So I'm going to share today some of the what's driving us towards this age of people intelligence, and give you a little bit of a taste on how the technologies are coming in to help with that. So 3 key points. We're going to be 25 minutes, half an hour or so walking through this. What I want to start with is the case. Like, what is it that's happening in our world? What are we learning? What are we understanding? Who's paying attention to those things that's really elevated this whole use of people data beyond the kind of classic reporting of how many people completed their performance reviews, how many people filled in the engagement survey, to what does this tell us about the likely revenue? What does this tell us about likely customer impact? What does this tell us about decisions we need to make in order to make our business successful? So what's been driving the case? Then we're going to look at this in motion. We've got some technology set up. We're just going to show you how the state of the art, what's possible, how we actually go about doing that, and then looking at how this scales out across a business. One of them, really, like money, people are kind of everywhere in a business. So one of the elements of how the most advanced groups, the groups that have been leading this for a long time, is working, is they're building this out across their organization. So let's jump right in. Here we go. So this is hot off the press. It's just published in November. It was super exciting for me to see, but it's that link between the people data and the business data. This is a piece of research by a company called BlackRock. They are an investment firm. They look at putting money into the market to work out whose stocks should I buy, whose stocks shouldn't I buy, what's going to go up, what's going to go down. And what they did is a really long look. This is a 2012 to 2021. So that's a number of years in there, 9 roughly. And they're looking at resignation rates. So what's the rate at which people are leaving your business? And they're putting that against return on assets. And so the vertical bar is return on assets, like how much money are we making off the money we have? And then they grouped it by organizations with high turnover and organizations with low turnover. Those of you who are used to understanding charts and have a quick eye, we'll look at quintile 2. So that's the group that are in the top 80% for a low turnover. They aren't the very best, they're the second best. And that's the group where a standout, like their results are above trend in terms of return on assets. And so what that's telling an investor is I need to pay attention to resignation rate. It determines how much money is coming back to a business. It has a direct impact on that. And I also need to know that too little is actually not helpful. Again, lots of people will look at our resignation rates like, oh, let's make it as small as possible. And what this research highlights is that's not actually the case. What we need is a certain amount of throughput. Many people look at an organization like it's an engine. It's not an engine. It's an ecosystem. All the different parts interact with each other. Sometimes they have unintended consequences of how they sort of grow and work together. And so this is saying too little transition in your ecosystem actually has an effect on your returns. Too much clearly has an effect on your returns. Then, 2 things that are key for me with this one, which is like why this is the age of people intelligence. This isn't a research group. This isn't a research consulting business or an HR consulting business putting this out. This is BlackRock, an investment business that have put time and energy into making this. And then, a lot of us have understood this intuitively for a while. And you would, depending on who you are, if you're like me, you've argued with CFOs for many decades about exactly this. But now what we're seeing is the proof. And now what we're seeing is people putting that proof there. The next one will be, again, released this year and in the Harvard Business Review. And this means for me that people data is on the CEO agenda. Again, what this group looked at is revenue per employee and trying to understand what drives a difference. So guess what? People who are in the top quarter they classified it experience. What they mean by experience is the people who've been with the business a long time. Again, intuitively, this stuff makes sense. I've been with the business. I know what I'm selling. I understand how to sell it. I sell more of it. Many people wouldn't debate that line of argument. But what these researchers are detecting, and why this is vital to a CEO, is that this has up to a 50% difference in your revenue per employee. So all of us are heading into hard economic times. All of us are looking for, questing for that. How do we make the best use of what we have? How do we make the business successful? Well, here is one key driver. Hold on to the people who understand your business well. It's not just about anybody in any seat. It's actually about the right bodies in the right seats, and with up to a 50% difference in terms of those drivers. And this summed it up for me. Is again, like, why are we saying this is the age of people intelligence? Because people like BlackRock, people like Larry Fink, who's the CEO, who have a significant influence on SEC regulation, significant influence on how money is deployed against share prices and can move markets, are viewing people data as absolutely essential in their decision-making process. And so what's the challenge that we have here? The challenge we have is what we describe as the people impact gap. This is something that I've studied personally and put some research into. What's been happening in the people domain is HR is kind of been focusing on HR. Often the group that look after HR, they have to build technology that tracks events and tracks collaboration. They haven't really been looking at what does the business need? How does the business need it? Who are the business stakeholders that we should be serving? And that's created this gap where we have a really rich set of data on the people side, but we aren't working out how to bring it across that gap to serve the business. And we priced that gap. And we looked at it based on research from some folks out of the University of New York, and looked at the number of organizations who were using people data, weren't using people data. We estimate in the US alone, this people impact gap is worth 1.8 trillion. And so we think that's a lot of money sitting on the table. If I roll back to that prior example, I've got 50% more revenue per employee. I've got this gap that is a revenue benefit potentially of up to 1.8 trillion. That to me says this is a place we should go look. We've got the evidence, we've got the data, we've got the opportunity. It seems prime for us to go look. So what stops us going to look? One of the things that, again, I've seen over my career is this explosion of systems of record in the HR space. It used to be you had an HRIS and then you did everything in some kind of spreadsheet, sometimes on paper. Then maybe you had an HRIS, and then maybe you had an ATS, and then maybe you had something that does employee survey data, like a Qualtrics or a Medallia or a Perceptyx or even a SurveyMonkey. And what's happened and accelerated during the pandemic is the number of different technical systems that manage people data. And we call this a transactional system. It's record keeping. As like, who works for me? What is the answer to the survey? They keep static information. It's exploded. You can see there that the average, even a small organization, has 9 different systems they're trying to manage. And that creates this really, really complicated tech stack. But we've got data everywhere. We've got survey data in one tool. We've got what people get paid in another tool. We might have their performance rating in another tool. We know who they work for in another tool. And so this explosion of different components of tech create this spaghetti mess of data. So it becomes slow, hard, complex, potentially expensive, not to manage the records, but to use that data to answer really, really critical business questions. And that's where the people intelligence capability comes in. That's where technologies which harmonize from different systems. And again, in the old world, that would be a data warehouse, and then we'd have some smart people who'd pull people from the data warehouse, and then they would work on it, and then they would post it into some kind of visualization tool like a Tableau or a Power BI. And in each instance, they would be like the warehouse worker in an Amazon building where they go, they find what's required, they assemble it into the package, and then they send it out to the person that's going to consume the package. If you think about that as an operating model, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of people going places to assemble things and then distribute that out. It actually starts to break very, very quickly in terms of getting enough information to enough people fast enough. And that's created this space where people intelligence platforms are fitting in. And what they do is they complement the warehouse, but they also step above the warehouse in that they do the assembly, the organizing, the creation of a space to answer questions all at the same time. So when a request comes in, like, can you tell me if women who moved into leadership positions are staying with us? That's not a request to somebody to go in the warehouse, dig out all the data, bring it out, clean it, organize it, and tell you the answer in a couple of months. That's something that the system can answer automatically because of how it's built. And so this represents that state of the possible, state of the art in terms of single technology platforms which bring in data from all of these different places. They run cleansing, they run organizing, they can often augment the data as well using AI, adding things like skills, adding things like standardization to the jobs, so that you as a business person, you as somebody responsible for providing this people intelligence to your business, are instantly in a place to start answering questions. And again, we've established just how often and how many of those questions are. So I suspect your business is like ours, which is like, will I have enough headcount? What's my bench strength? If I close down this group or open up this group, what does that mean in terms of who I should keep and who I should move? I mean, the questions just keep coming. And they come at a pace where, again, the traditional model of go to the warehouse, pull out the data, assemble it, clean it, distribute it, it's too slow. It doesn't keep up with the needs of the organization. So we need a technology layer that automates that preparation, just makes it available. So now we understand what we are looking at. I'm going to take a quick pivot. I'm going to actually jump into our application, and I'm going to show you the art of the possible, because it's a lot easier to see than to talk about. And so here I am. This is a people intelligence platform. You've come into a live version. It's dummy data, so don't get too worried about exactly the data, but it's a live version of what's possible. Now, this is my executive dashboard. Each of these components I can click into, I can see detail. Again, I've got some kind of information about what I'm looking at should I choose to, but that's not where the real power is. Lots of people don't want to dig around. As I said, we kind of established that the warehouse is a slow, difficult way to actually answer questions. No executive wants to go and pour through that anymore. So modern tech is designed with search. I'm picking up who is leaving. Who doesn't want to know who is leaving? That's a question. Even though we're in difficult times, it's not necessarily that you worry about everybody leaving, but you're certainly going to worry about some of your highest performers. So using AI, the technologies are able to build a risk of exit score. Again, with I'm a full view of ethical use of AI, so full transparency. It's a random forest algorithm. It's trained on prior history. It's tuned to understand which of what's best about the history. It returns that back as a prioritized list so you can understand things. But as we said, I'm not necessarily interested in everybody. I am interested in high performers. So I'm going to instantly fill in my list to high performers. And here I got Juan. I'm instantly served with some of the elements that are important about Juan. That's like that. These are the things that have put him on the top of the list. They aren't always his reasons for leaving. If you want reasons for leaving, you kind of need to look at people who've left. If you want reasons for staying, again, you have to do different things. But this gives me a sense of who is Juan and what is key about Juan. But I'm going to have a whole bunch of other questions as well. So typically, when you start to look at trying to keep somebody, you want to understand what's their journey been with the business. So I don't have to go and ask another question. I don't have to say, hey, what do we need to know about Juan? Go back to the warehouse, pull out 5 years worth of data and try and organize that into history. I'm instantly served with a means of scrolling across things that have changed for Juan as he's done that. I also then figure, I want to keep Juan. He's an important part of my team. So what kind of conversation can I have with him? Well, now I'm going to go and look at his career path. He's an information security manager. We all know those are super important roles right now. And built on all of the data that lives inside this people intelligence capability, again, we can construct future pathways that other people have followed. So this isn't made and then printed into the application. It's actually detected live from all of the information that's built out over time. How many people did what? So if I want to have a conversation with Juan about his career, I can start to talk to him and say, there's a bunch of people who have gone to the IT project office. It isn't a common path. Only 4 people have done that, but it usually takes them about 10 months from where you are. If you want to go into software reliability, fewer people, longer time. The most common place people have gone is into IT infrastructure. So, help me understand which one of these 3 paths is attractive. If it's not attractive, then, we can change the conversation. In addition, once I've got there, simple double click on my infrastructure manager. Here are the steps you can take afterwards. And again, I'm not having to do any kind of, go back to somebody and ask for a rerun on a SQL query or ask for a rerun on any kind of component. It's available to me here. Other simple things to call out. Once I've found an insight, I can capture it. I've then got a whole distribution methodology. The facility with which we can find, answer questions, share that information with an HR business partner, share that information with the person they're serving. All of these things are very, very powerful and very important in terms of putting the data and putting the people intelligence to use. Let me take you back to where are we going after this. So showing you the art of the possible, you can see the speed of the answers, and I think that's a really important thing to understand when we have people intelligence. We're not in a world anymore where it's like, oh yeah, you've got a question, I'll get back to you, is kind of as good as saying I can't answer that question, you should just move on. Because what we know around habits of business leaders, habits of humans in general, they're moving through their process of making business decisions. So if they don't have the data, they'll just make the decision. And so this means you need to scale out those kinds of insights. It's not enough to have a single dashboard. It's not enough to have a smart person who can go make the answer on time. We're not in that world anymore. The speed of demand is way beyond that. And so that gets you again to examples of the state of the art. And this is again where the application of AI, our understanding of the persona, who is the user, what are they trying to do, and our ability to drop that insight into their inbox becomes an absolutely essential part of delivering people intelligence at scale. An example from my own inbox, you can see me in the right hand corner there, fake data, but what it's actually highlighting is a specific individual left my team. His name was Alan Hayden Washington. Again, never had this employee, but this is the example. And then what it's given me is very, very specifically based on similarity algorithms. It is pulling out the people who are like Hayden. It's giving me details about who they are, and it's coming into my inbox. So imagine that triggers. People who handle a small team, 4 or 5 people, they probably know this stuff. But when you start to get up into the bigger teams, there's 10, 15, 20, 30 people, this kind of insight popping into your inbox starts to trigger that, oh yeah, maybe I should talk to them. And that's where you start to trigger change, because for every one of those conversations, you've reduced the risk of somebody else leaving. You perpetuate that person's skill, that person's relationships, that person's motivation in the business. We've already established that's linked back to driving revenue. So this isn't, oh gosh, I've got another thing to do for HR. This is actually, thank goodness, HR is helping me achieve my revenue goals. They're putting it in my inbox. And where we think this is going, again, starting to paint this out a little bit further. I'm based in Vancouver in Canada. For a lot of the year, it's a cold, snowy place. In my life, that's a great thing because I love to ski in the backcountry. And this is a snapshot of my Strava. And I wanted to start here because when we see this people intelligence scaling, there's an element where, again, a lot of our clients are already serving managers. Recently on the stage with individuals from Wayfair, they are serving 5,000 managers with the kind of insights I've just shared. But where we know this is going is beyond the manager and down to the employee. So this is an individual picture for me. All of us live and work with this kind of technology on our wrists, on our phones, in our daily lives. Everybody has their own particular flavor, be it Apple, be it Google, be it Strava, be it Fitbit around steps. but all of us are used to this highly personalized, extremely well curated, very relevant information right on our desktops when we need it to help us think through our own behavior, to help us think through our responses to where the goals we're trying to achieve. And so that's what's happening next with this technology. This is a thing called workplace dynamics. It's linking into the flow of an individual's work. And this is not monitoring tech. I'm really not a huge fan of technologies that count keystrokes or take photographs of you, see if you're working. Those things, there's very few jobs where output is really defined by whether or not you're looking at your computer. Many individuals work with their brains. Other individuals work in terms of outputs. I've got some individuals I've worked with, they can do in 2 hours what other people take 4 to do. So we need to focus on output. So it's also, again, destroys trust when people feel like they're being inspected too far. People will find ways to work around it. I know a bunch of developers have already invented mouse jigglers. As soon as they understood that their mouse is being tracked, well, they write a piece of code that says my mouse will jiggle every 5 minutes and I will disrupt that listening code just purely because they can. So yet to be invented the system that employees will not, that feels intrusive, that employees will not find their way around. But what employees do value, and I have my own instance of this and I really value it, they value feedback about how they're working. It's really easy to get lost in your own day. It's like, am I putting my time with the right people? Am I putting my time into the right meetings? My contributions in those meetings, what do people genuinely think of those things? And that's where this notion of personal insights, like workplace dynamics, captured through the flow of email communication, captured through the flow of meeting time use, not again to monitor and say, oh, you didn't do enough meetings. I mean, nobody ever needs to have that feedback, but fed back to the employee saying, here are the people you communicate with. I regularly scan my list of the people I communicate with, A, to see who's the top, and then B, to make some assessment of who have I not spoken to that I maybe should. I'd have to go back through my calendar by hand to do that. This application allows me to make that decision. Again, it gives me a sense of time use, gives me a sense of how others perceive my input in terms of my collaboration with them. And again, if we go back to the absolute, what's the essence of building business success? People, their experience, their relationship drive value. That value drives revenue. If you can put this kind of insight, this intelligence into the hands of specific employees, automated. So again, nobody's going to the warehouse to make this report for me. It's just dropped to my desktop. That starts to really drive the opportunity to activate the organization, activate it at an employee level, activate it in a way that is really focused on driving performance overall. So again, quick example of how it works and what it's being processed, and going back to this notion of you need some form of capability, some kind of people intelligence platform that sits in the middle, because everything I've shared isn't coming from different places. It's all flowing through the same technology. We got passive and active feedback. The passive is listening to the email strings. The active is sending smart surveys based on what we hear from the emails. That's not going a different place. Again, going back to this notion of proliferation of systems, none of this is going back to a different place where I've got to send a manager over here for this answer, then over here for that answer, and then over here for another answer. All that's coming through a single continuous insight, be it the employee, be it the team leader, business unit leader, aggregated up so that the executive can have an understanding. It's all orchestrated through a people intelligence capability that then helps the business keep on top of and understand what's happening. And so this is establishing the need for people intelligence. Going further, some of the more advanced organizations that we're working with, they have this really rich insight to their people. They know how they feel from surveys, from capture of sentiment from email. They know what they're working on from project details. They know who they work with and teams they're on. What they're then starting to look at is what's on the right-hand side of this slide for me, which is the blue data. How many Jira stories are they completing? How many Asana tickets have got done? How many calls have been responded to? What was the output of the team in terms of production quota or whatever that was? Starting to mesh together this really rich understanding of people and how they behave with the actual things that are made by the people and what that means for the business, so that it can be managed at the business unit level, at the department level, alongside the activation of the people strategy. And we would put this all together as being people intelligence. Sometimes you need an element of external data. We publish resignation benchmarks so that people can work out, am I doing better or worse than my peers? And so that's this internal, external business data plus people data all starts to create that picture of how are we doing. It puts people on the same plane as finance. There are two inputs, there's people and finance. We've always understood how money activates and connects to our ability to get results. We're at that same level now. Again, the most advanced organizations, those who've been pushing the boundaries for the last 10, 15 years, are at that place where their CEO will even understand exactly how people are contributing to results and building forward on that. So this is where we, again, the very leading edge are. We clearly understand this is where the world is going. Which brings me to my kind of closing comments. Really excited to be part of Global Digital Week. I think it's a fantastic initiative. I think it's a really good way to help all of us expand and step into moving our worlds of work forward, because the future is already here. What I've shown and described is delivered technology. It's being used by organizations. They're using it to help make success. So the future is already here. There's organizations working in this way. It's just not evenly distributed. It's the pioneers, those who've jumped on it. We can guarantee it'll be coming to your market, to your competitors, to yourselves very soon. And we think that's a great way to learn, not to try and reinvent, not to try and rediscover, but actually take and work with those who've pioneered and maybe followed a few blind alleys, but then activate based on what they know, activate based on what they've learned, bring that into your businesses faster and better so that you can stay competitive, so that you can use it as an advantage against your competition. So thanks for listening. Hopefully there's some key insights. If you're in business, you deal with people, you already know how important they are. Hopefully I've shown you how you can use that people data to inform your organization, to make people perform better, to bring better financial results. And in the end, that's going to show up, in the share price and the investor perspective for your organization. So I'm Ian Cook. I'm with Visier. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.